Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Raising the New Earth. I'm here with Noah. Hi, Noah.
Hey, Brooke.
Hello. And today we are talking about minimalism. I am really excited to dive into this topic. We did have an episode on consumerism over the holidays. So we kind of touched on kind of minimalist concepts, but I know that for me, minimalism, I will say the concepts of minimalism have really been life-changing. And so I'm excited to kind of share my journey and just some of both of our thoughts on intentionally living with less is kind of what you could boil it down to. What I will say about minimalism, I don't necessarily call myself a minimalist. I tend to stick or shy away from labels as it is. And you probably would walk into my house and not really be like, oh, she's a minimalist, because I think that there's like this idea that being a minimalist means like living in a white box with barely any possessions. But and it can look like that, but I don't think that's necessarily the point of minimalism. To me, the best kind of understanding of it is to clarify what it is that you value the most, and then let go of everything else that is standing in the way or being a distraction from what it is that you truly value. So it really is about the intention in whatever you're bringing to your life, and that can even go beyond possessions, relationships and things of that nature. So that's what I really connect with. And I think that the mindset shift around that is that minimalism isn't about restriction. It's not about restricting yourself in any way, but it's that by choosing that intentional mindset of what you bring into your life, you're creating freedom. So freedom from, just stress and clutter and, kind of that outside validation of where you're getting your value and connecting it back to you. So yeah, what are your thoughts there, Noah? Does that all resonate?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because by no ways, shape, or form am I a minimalist. But like you said, with everything in life, there is an intention. So it's not us preaching, for minimalism. It's us encouraging to look for the intention and consciousness, because everything in life is the intention and consciousness. And so I'm excited to bring this episode and to kind of think about ways that we have allowed ourselves to accumulate stuff that maybe no longer serve us, no longer needed, from children's clothes, baby clothes, to our clothes, to, 10 different pots, to 25 different teacups that I currently have in my pantry. So all these things need to be examined and looked at. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Well, I'll kind of start with like, because I do think it's like important for me to like put in context of how even this kind of came into my life. Um, it was over 10 years ago now, but I mentioned this in the consumerism podcast or the over the holidays. So definitely go back and listen to that if you haven't. Um, but essentially I took a trip to Ecuador and I went to this like it was in the Amazon rainforest, and we went and visited the home of some indigenous people, and I just saw, they essentially lived off of the land. They had nothing as far as like material possessions, and yet to me they had everything. And it was something that really stuck with me. And as I came back to my home, I think I kind of started to reevaluate the things that I had and what it was really providing me. And and it probably was not until like a few months later that I came across this blog. It's called Unfancy. She still blogs. Her name's Caroline. I don't remember. Rector, I think is her last name. But she essentially introduced me to this concept of capsule wardrobe. And my wardrobe was where I was not a minimalist. in fact, like I would say that my goal, before then was like to get as big of a closet as I could and make sure that I had it filled to the brim. And and I did. I had things everywhere. Like I had clothing everywhere. And so I came across this blog, and it's essentially minimizing your wardrobe to a certain number of pieces. I think she had done like 45 things or something. And how much creativity can come from that, and just being able um to look at your wardrobe and kind of fashion through that lens. So I read that blog, like I literally read every single post. I remember staying up until like 3 o'clock in the morning reading every post, because it just was sinking in so deeply that this is what I needed in my life. And so I did that. I cleaned out my closet. I I either sold or donated almost 75% of my clothes. And then around that same time, I also was moving to DC, where I was going to be living in a less than 500 square foot apartment. So it also gave me the chance to really look at just everything that I had and downsize to what would fit in that studio apartment. So it was really, I would say, like one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because I really truly got a sense of how it feels when you're able to just let go and kind of start fresh. And it felt so liberating and so free. And I would tell everybody about, like, let me tell you about my capsule wardrobe. I mean, my family still kind of laughs about it with me to this day. And I don't have like a certain amount of clothes in my closet, but I do. I'm very intentional with what I do bring in for the most part. And I'll talk about that later. I feel like I have some places where I need to kind of relook and re-examine. Um, but essentially that's kind of where it started for me. And the thing about it is that I realize is that before kind of like going through that whole journey, and I think it had a lot to do with, I was also starting to practice yoga. But when I was really being honest with myself, I don't know if I could have been that honest with myself back then, but my value came from the possessions that I had. Like that's where I was my value was being reflected. And I've taken full circle to where I know that my value comes internally from me, and it doesn't really matter what I have, what logos I'm wearing, what kind of car, or the size of house that I'm living in. So that to me is like the most important lesson in all that I've kind of learned about minimalism, is where my value comes from, and intentionally bringing that value to my life rather than the other way around, where that value is kind of being dictated to me by what I can possess. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that authentic sharing, and I have to share that. So I never cared about logos. I don't know why I never cared about them. And I was bullied for it in elementary school, because everybody had whatever, I think it was like everybody wore Levi's jeans, and I wore like a hand-me-down, I don't know, jeans, whatever. And I was bullied for not being for not being a conformist. And I remember it never hurt me that they bullied me because I'm not wearing what they're wearing. It made me feel sad for them not seeing the value in them, other than the clothes that their parents are spending money on it because it's a label. And it's a really interesting thought for a 9-year-old girl looking back at it. Like, why didn't I care? Well, I didn't grow up in America. I grew up in Israel. But there was still the westernized capitalistic idea of you should have that to be included in this or that circle. I didn't care about it. I cared about, leading from the right place and not leading by what I'm wearing. Because God knows, sometimes I showed up with my PJs, and and for me it worked out because I became I was an artist my whole life. So I kind of like created myself, and whatever it is I'm wearing came with a certain mood. and a certain statement, and not necessarily saying, something on my butt to promote a label. I always felt, okay, if they want me to wear something with a logo, you should pay me because I'm basically a walking commercial. Like
Right.
that was my idea. But I did, I did get sucked into capitalism very, very quickly after I settled in Los Angeles. When I lived in Hollywood, I had two apartments I could choose from, and I chose the one that had a walk-in closet. Bar none, that's what I chose. I was like, I'm gonna choose the one with the walk-in closet, and I'm gonna go to TJ Maxx or whatever, commercial stores, near the corner, and get myself an outfit for the day, because I looked around me and that's what people were doing, literally shopping for an outfit for one occasion. And I remember calling my mom. I was like, you're not going to believe it. Things here are so cheap. You can actually buy a whole outfit for, whatever amount of money, and then wear a whole different one the next day, you know? And so
Yeah.
I did get sucked into that. Still not labels. I felt like I didn't want to go, but I found my way into consumerism and capitalism, and being more aware of what I'm wearing and changing what I'm wearing, still within the budget that I had back then.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible that it like that young of an age that you kind of had that mindset of, how sad for them that they have to wear the label. Do you think that was like from your family, that it was just not really important
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so. Because my sister and my brother they didn't care
Right.
what they were
Yeah.
wearing. And we didn't come, we didn't have, we came from a middle class family. So for us, it was, let's spend this money on, my voice lessons, singing lessons, ballet. I was a competitive dancer, competitive singer. So all the money went there to me,
Mhm.
going after school for 5 hours and dance or sing or whatever I needed. So I knew that the money was valuable and it shouldn't be spent on something that I didn't care about. But I did remember one time I asked my mom to get me a Barbie, and Barbie back then was very expensive. And she said, we don't have the money to buy you Barbie. It's like, okay, so I guess we're not, we don't have enough money to do that. But I was rich in all other areas of our lives. There's always food, and there's family, and there's enough money for everything, vacations, but not, I think my mom stirred us away from the materialistic world.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And I think the fact that you had like such a drive and passion at a young age, where it's like you could bring your attention to those places, and that's truly where you were getting your value and happiness from, were
That's true.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. My
Yeah,
energy
I
was
think that's
spent
important.
elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that that's interesting how you brought up moving to the United States. Things kind of like flipped a little bit for you, and I think that that says a lot about especially the culture. And, like I said, it's Western culture in general, but that's certainly, I think, part and parcel to the United States, and kind of driven by that. That, we live in a time of history where we can basically get anything at the drop of a hat. We can order off Amazon. I mean, things are relatively inexpensive. Like, you can get, I don't know what Barbies cost, but like other little dolls, you can go to the dollar store and get a dollar. So it's like this mindset of like, well, everything's so cheap and I can get this and I can get that. And I mean, we can talk about this in and of itself. It's destroying the environment. We're consuming things at this rapid pace. And, those possessions, we get caught in this trap that, we need these certain things in order to fulfill us or make us happy. And a lot of that is that, um, we're being constantly marketed to and constantly advertised to. And it's not to say, that these companies are doing anything bad or wrong necessarily. Like, they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is increase shareholder value by continually driving sales. But I think that where we're kind of missing out on, our American, just the general population can understand, is like, that is what they're doing just because you're being advertised to that you need this and that your life is going to be more fulfilled because once you have this product, this whatever it is, it's bringing in that consciousness that that's what they're telling me. I don't have to believe it. And I think the more that you can connect in with who you are, what your value is, it's not as easy to fall for that. And I say that I'm saying that to myself too, because I still, it's easy to get caught in that trap when you turn on your phone and you're being advertised to, you're going down the street. I mean, just we're constantly bombarded with advertising.
Yeah,
So
you're not just being marketed to, but the algorithm finds your niche that you need to be marketing to.
exactly.
Like this is a whole different game.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Where you didn't have that 15 years ago. You didn't have the technology that's literally finding what your preferences are and then dosing that to you. So
Right.
we're kind of in it brings it even more important that we bring in that intention of, do I really need this? And not that it's fine to want things too. It's not that you have to bring in everything that you really, really need, but it's, again, coming back to those values and, is this really bringing value to my life by bringing this in? So,
Yeah. And you
yeah.
mentioned the dollar store. It's so true because sometimes, we'll go to Target and my kids will ask me, can we choose one thing? And I said, yes, you can choose one little thing. And that's something my mom used to do with us whenever one of the kids wanted to go out with her, then she would reward us with one little thing. And I like that. I like that, incentive. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
with stuff. It can be with food, whatever you feel comfortable with. But then I changed my direction. I said, you know what? We're not going to get you any more stuff. You don't need anything. And we periodically donate all clothes, all shoes, my husband and I included, the kids for sure, all toys. We put a bag for donation, and we like donating to a nonprofit organization called James Storehouse, and they help foster kids that now have their own kids. So everything you can think about, diapers, bicycles, everything. So we like donating to them. But whenever we have other furniture, we just call Salvation Army or send it to Goodwill. But so they know that if something comes in, something has to come out. And my husband does the same. He'll buy clothes and he'll donate clothes. I'm not very good at it yet, but working on it.
Yeah.
But my point of the story is that I said, okay, you know what, girls, let's go to the dollar store and we'll pick you something there. Because in my mind is like, you know what, it's $1. It's not $15 or $24 for a Barbie. But then I was like, this serves the same purpose. This is not doing any good because it's more stuff that they don't need that is made in China, and it accumulates, you know, less space. So now they have less space in their room for the stuff that I thought is better just because I'm not paying $25. So from a financial standpoint, yes, you only spend $1 or $1.18 or $1.25. But from materialistic standpoint, it is the same. And then we end up, getting storage unit. In America, you rent storage unit for the stuff that you couldn't even accumulate in your own home, or you buy a bigger house to what? To fit more things. So where is the end? Where is it ending? So I did not calculate that one correctly.
Yeah. Well, it's such it's such a way, I think, a mindset that's normal. And I struggle with the same thing because it's the same mentality too, of like finding something on sale or like the good deal. And it's like, well, I mean, this is like 75% off. So like, I'd be crazy to pass this up without really thinking like, okay, how often am I, I go to clothes is where I go in my mind, but it's like, how often am I going to wear this? Like, does it really even go with anything else in my wardrobe? So it's like this idea that just because it's cheap doesn't mean that you need it. And that being said too, because, and I recently watched the Minimalist, documentary, and the Minimalist, I'll kind of back up. It's a great resource, but it's two guys. They, are childhood best friends and kind of turn their life around with minimalism. And they've started a blog and have books and a podcast now. But they were saying, they both actually grew up poor. So but they could have then even used minimalist concepts, because where they were kind of saying, like, when you're poor, you don't turn away free stuff. So it's like, it's that same mentality. Just because it's free doesn't mean you need it in your life either. So really, cost has nothing to do with the value that it's bringing into your life. And in fact, it's probably in many times decreasing the value of your life, because what it's doing is taking up space. And space is not a bad thing. Like, it's kind of nice to have space in your closet, to have, things that aren't packed to the brims. And yeah, with a storage unit, it's crazy. Like storage business is booming in the United States, that, because people need more places to put their stuff. And not saying that it's not always, justified, but it's something that you have to kind of come to on your own. Like, is this justified to be paying for this storage every single month? So it really is like this huge mindset shift. And that's what I love about minimalism. It's not necessarily like, living sparsely and like having nothing, but it's the mindset that what you're bringing in is not necessarily adding value into your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a tradition in Japan that I really like. I'm a fan of, well, I'm a fan of other people that are skilled, that can repurpose stuff. I don't have the creative ability to do that. My mom is really good at it. Like, she'll take a curtain and make it into a dress. She's really good about repurposing stuff and making it into something else. But I know there's a tradition in Japan. It's called kintsugi, where they take broken objects, let's say like a teapot, and if they're broken, they use glue infused with this powdered gold, and they'll create these beautiful lines all over it. And it looks so beautiful. It looks like a precious prize, by the time it's done.
Yeah.
And it becomes even more valuable for having those, finely glued objects. And another practice is called sakiori, where they take old clothes or rags that are just torn, broken, and they're being rewoven to this one of a kind fabric. So rather than discarding of the object, they're repurposing them. And they, like in ourselves, we see the possibilities that they hold, as opposed to say, okay, I no longer need it. Here you go, off you go. And if you think about it, in the natural world, nothing is ever wasted. Nothing. There's
So
always
true.
someone or something else that can make
Mm.
use of others, and others' discards. Like, I see our apples, even our apples that are no longer good, and they fall into the ground, and so the squirrels are eating them. Or a hole in the tree, it's being forged by a woodkeeper from last season, may become the perfect home for an owl this season. Or fallen trees that are really shelters for all sorts of creatures. So everything has a purpose and
Yeah.
repurpose, and it's paving the way for future growth. Every stone turns into sand, and that sand forges new features in that landscape. Everything is created and recreated, and it often carries multiple roles in the cycle of life. So if we apply that to physical objects that we accumulate and we interact with every day, the idea is perhaps that everything has multi-purpose. Everything also has energy from a spiritual standpoint. If you have items in your household that are memorabilia from someone that is no longer with you, or memorabilia from someone that was in your life but it ended up badly, what energy is this bringing into your life? Do you really need that energy? What vibration is it creating in your biofield energy of your most sacred place, which is your home? So we get to choose what we want to include in that everything platform, and we can enrich our lives even more by seeing the possibilities in renewal and the possibilities of discarding when needed, or giving it to someone else,
Yes. Yeah. Those are such incredible points. Like, and it's with the energy of stuff, I think of also the difference in when you're truly like letting go of things versus just stuffing things in a closet. So it looks like everything's like calm and controlled, and you don't have a lot. And the energy there is so different. Like there's still an energetic blueprint of those things that are like stuffed in closets, even though you're not seeing them every single day. So I think that that's so important to be mindful of. And with the Japanese, the term that they use, like if you think about it, pre-industrial revolution, everything was like that because you couldn't get things cheap and easy. So you did repurpose and, get the full lifespan out of something, where now it's like it's way easier to just buy something new when something breaks. Like to fix it is crazy. But I love that idea. And what I think of when you were bringing up the term and the teacup specifically is because I love old things. Like I'm drawn so much to like the history of something and shopping in antique shops. And, there's a term patina, and like that when things show their patina, their age, like it's beautiful. Like, and I think that like in our westernized culture, especially, we kind of like have this idea that beauty is like perfect, no flaws. Like even if you look at like newer homes that are just like, and kitchens that almost look like super sterile, and like that is kind of what is thought of as beautiful in some people's eyes. But I don't know, to me, and I know everybody has their different personal preferences. And even with minimalism, like a lot of people do live in a super modern, very utilitarian type belonging. So a lot of it is just your personal preference on what you like. But to me, like I love when there's things that show their like history and their character. And, you can kind of imagine like what its life was before you. So I think I feel like there is kind of a resurgence of that happening, where people are starting to like look at thrift stores and stuff, because it's so much more unique than like, going to Target and getting something that thousands of US households have the same thing. So I think it's a cool concept. And when you brought up like the energy of things too, and you'll know about this in yoga, there's a term called aparigraha, which is letting go. And it's, there's the yamas and niyamas, which is part of the 8-limbed path. And I think that in and of itself, like learning how to let go, sometimes it starts with material possessions. And that's where I think like minimalism can kind of be a catalyst for so much of other things in your life, because once you can start to practice letting go of material things, I think it also makes you much more able to let go of other things that aren't serving you, whether it's, relationships or a career or things that it just allows you a lens to look at things through. So I think there's like a lot of spiritualness to the idea of like minimalism and just that intention behind there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the teacup. So my friend Diana. She wanted to switch from coffee in the morning to herbal teas. And she was like, okay, I would like to drink teas instead of coffee. I'd like to make this switch, but I don't have any teacups that I'll feel great about sipping from them. And so she went to all the secondhand stores, the Goodwill, the whatever thrift stores you call them, and she found this beautiful, beautiful ceramic teacup. And now she posts her tea with the scone every morning on her Instagram. And it's funny because when she went through this process, I went through this process because like I want to enjoy herbal teas in the evening. I want to, sometimes I'm not hungry in the evening and I just want to enjoy warm tea like a hug. Of course, now it's 88 degrees, so I'm not enjoying that. But before, I was like, yeah, that's going to be my nightly practice. And so I, on the other hand, went to Amazon, it's a click away, and, and ordered this teapot with 8 little cups from Japan. So, because for me, it's like, I'm not going to drink a cup that someone else that I don't know have germs on it. So
Yeah.
that's where I went. But I admire her for doing that. But I chose a different route. So it was made in Japan, not in China.
Yeah.
Whatever I say to myself to make it okay. But that was,
Well, and I think it's like, again, like it comes down to you as an individual. Like, we're not all going to value the same things. We're not going to find like joy out of the same things. Like, I think it's so cool that she was able to like find so much joy out of like,
Yes.
finding this teacup. And then every day that became her ritual to drink out of the teacup. But we're all different. And I think that also that leads me to kind of another point that, or another kind of topic, I guess, in the same realm is, well, really, it's just the financial perspective too of like living with less. Like, there's so much more freedom you can have when you're able to kind of like really reevaluate what you're bringing in. And a book that and this kind of takes it down to the individual level, but there's a guy, and he has a documentary on Netflix now too. His name's Ramit Sethi, and his book is I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he doesn't necessarily like talk about minimalism specifically, but what he does talk about is designing your rich life. And rich life doesn't really have anything to do from financial perspective. It's all relative of what is rich. But the idea is that what you're going to find enriching for your life, how you define your rich life, is going to be very different from what somebody else defines as their rich life. And so if we don't come with that intention of like, what is our rich life? What do we want in our life? Where is our value? Then we're more easily hijacked by all those advertisings, or like keeping up with the Joneses mentality where, well, they got a new car, so I guess I need to get a new car too, or, continuing to buy the big house or whatever. So I love his approach in that just because something else is like very important to someone and they value it doesn't mean that that's what you need to value too. And so, yeah, it seems kind of obvious when you say it, but if you really, really think about it deep down, we often, don't really think like, okay, where is it that like financially I need to be placing my value? So,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So and with the, just kind of with that in mind, like, I think, and this is where, I'll kind of dive into like, because I've said like minimalism, like I went through my story of like kind of how I was introduced to minimalism and how much that mind shift was so important to me. I think right now, like I am kind of going through like, for me, like when I first heard the concept, I needed that like major discipline. Like, I'm going to whittle my wardrobe down to this amount of pieces. And it was so nice that I was like moving into a smaller place where it was forcing me. But I have moved so many times over the last few years, and I keep moving to a bigger and bigger place, which in some ways makes sense because it's not just me now. However, I think like as we were kind of coming back to this episode, I've kind of been in my own place of like, okay, let me reevaluate like my stuff and what it's kind of doing, because I still keep a very small closet, but it was overflowing, so I like cleaned it out. And then with having children, that brings its own kind of set of challenges, and really, it's not, I mean, right now I have most of the control over it, but at the same time, people give presents and it's very nice and thoughtful. But it's just, making sure that it doesn't get too much. But one place where I think like I've really thought of like where I do value, and where I spend my money, I was just kind of thinking through this just so people kind of get a sense. Like, to me, TV is not really important to me. So we don't have cable. We don't have like, we do have Netflix right now, but I usually get it for like 2 months of the year and then cancel it. But one thing that is very important to me, where somebody might think otherwise, is hopefully not, well, maybe not listening to this podcast, but food. Like, food is important to me, and I spend a lot of money on food. That being said, though, where I do cut down or balance that out is that I don't like to buy a lot of convenience foods. Like I'd rather just make it myself. It's healthier. The healthy convenience foods tend to be a lot more money, and they're not all that healthier. So I think that's like a good, just I guess representation of like, I just have recognized the things that I do value and don't value. Yeah, with clothes, like again, I've way better than I did, but now when I do buy things, I try to buy them from like companies that are, more sustainable in their approach to fashion. So that's one thing I've looked at.
Yeah, I'm the
But
same way. Like I'll spend money on vitamins and supplements. I mean, it's kind of my realm of what I do.
right,
But and I'll go for the cleanest because not two supplements are created equal. It's a, multi-billion dollar industry. And I know which brands I like and I know they're clean. So I'll spend more money on it. I know that my husband likes his toothpaste. We don't use fluoride in our home. And so I started making my own toothpaste. And when I offered it to the kids, I bought all these essential oils for them to choose from, like real essential oils, watermelon and lemon. And like, so I taught them how to make their own toothpastes with the essential oils of choice. None of the kids liked it. None of them. And my husband didn't like it. So my husband rather spend $10 on toothpaste, you know, and that is okay. That is what
right,
his choice on spending the money is. And
yeah,
also, like, we'll buy, my husband like that, there's a company called Violife. It's a really good cheese company, cheese alternative company, because we don't consume dairy. And so, do we really need that cheese, not cheese? Do we really need it? We don't need it. From a nutritional perspective, we don't need it. But he wants it. And so he gets it. Right. So this is where intention and consciousness is everything. Where I'm going to spend my money is not necessarily where you're going to spend your money.
yeah. Yep. And I think that exercise too is like helps to avoid conflicts in relationship as well. Like understanding that your preferences and way you do things might not necessarily always align with your partners. And it's finding that balance that, yeah, is important. That's so true.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
my mom came for a visit and she saw cans of beans in our pantry, she's like, why do you need cans of beans? Because I grew up on, buying 79 cents for a huge bag of beans. You put it in the pressure
Mm,
cooker and there you go. And so I still have dry beans waiting to be soaked. My husband likes that. He wants beans right
instant.
now, the
Yeah.
instant thing. So he buys cans of beans. But my mom was shocked. She almost yelled at me when she came. Like,
That's
why
so
do you
funny.
have cans of beans?
Well, and on the cans of beans versus the dried, like the taste of dried beans is so much better to me. Like
I agree.
so
It's more
I am
crunchy.
on that, like, yeah, on
Yeah.
the dry, and it does. You do though have to plan ahead. If you want beans and
Yes.
they're all dried, you're not going to get them like right that
Yeah.
moment.
No, just give me 48 hours. I'll soak them for 24 hours
Right.
with a little baking soda. I'll put in the. No,
Yeah.
I want. No.
That's where it helps to have routines and stuff too, which I still struggle with, but I am much better. Like I usually like once a week I've got some chickpeas that I've soaked and
That's
made
great.
because it's so much better, yeah,
Yeah,
than
I
canned to
agree.
me.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess maybe like I'll give some tips to kind of, if this resonates, like maybe some things that you could do to just bring that more intention and value. Um, One thing that the minimalists talk about that they do is like it's called or what they did when they first discovered minimalism is like I think they call it a packing party, but essentially you pack up all, I mean this is a little bit drastic, but you literally pack up everything you own in a box, and for a certain set of time period, whether that's like maybe 3 weeks, maybe 3 months, but like every time you need something, you go to the box and you get what you need. And then at the end of that time period, if you haven't reached for it, then the question is, do you really need it? And you can get rid of it. That's a little bit hardcore, but at the same time, like sometimes we get to places in our life where we need something like that. So if that's you, that might be a good place to start. I think if you wanted to like not be so drastic, maybe find like one area. Like for me, it was always my closet and my clothes, and really reevaluate what you have. And it's actually like this kind of rule, quote unquote, if it was to like self combust, whatever it is that you're trying to decide if you need to get rid of, would you want to go out and replace it right away? So for me, like for my clothes, that to me, like if when I'm ready to let go, I'm ready to let go. But it also brings that intention, like when I'm going to buy something, I want to make sure that I'm still going to love it, because, things change, preferences change, your lifestyle changes, but it's, again, just, it's not just the intentionality of when you let it go, but it's also the intentionality of like bringing it in too. And then just in general, I think that like if you really, and this goes back to Ramit Sethi and designing your rich life, is like really find the things that you do value. Maybe it is convenience, like, and actually I think Ramit says that is one of his. He will pay for convenience, things that are convenient to him. It sounds like your husband's a little bit like that too. but but what do you value? Do you value travel? Do you value like going outdoors and camping? Like, what are the things that really, really bring you joy in your life? And then when you look at where you're spending and where all your stuff is it aligning up? Like, are the things that you're bringing into your life and aligning with the joy and the things that you want to do more of? Like, if you really value travel, but at the end of the month, you've spent all of your money on whatever stuff that there's no money left to travel, like, can you reevaluate some of that and not bring as much in, so you do have that space and financial capacity to travel? So I think those are like, some of my like first kind of tips on what to do if you wanted to start looking at a little bit more
Yeah.
of
And
that mindset.
I would add maybe look at things that you can repurpose instead of throwing, like we mentioned, my
Mm-hmm.
mom's curtain made into a dress, or
Yes.
my husband's late dad who passed away, and he had so many ties, hundreds and hundreds of ties hanging in the closet. So instead of keeping all of them, they were made into a pillow. So we have
Yeah.
his dad's pillow in our house. So where can you repurpose instead of throwing would be another tip that I would add.
Yeah, such a good one. And that's so beautiful too, because if you had kept all the ties or something, like, I mean, what are they going to do? Be stuffed in a closet? But to make a pillow out of it, every time you look at that pillow, you can think of that person. So just, yeah, repurposing like that. And on that same note, buying quality things, like sometimes quality is going to spend, you're going to spend more upfront, but oftentimes, they're going to last longer. And you're going to value it more. You're going to appreciate it more if you've spent, I mean, perhaps, maybe not always in all cases, but yeah, when you're, just buying kind of junky stuff that breaks after a couple uses and you have to replace it, like, that's a good place to look of what kind of quality you're bringing in.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe for those that have small kids or small kids that have grown up already, I would address the garage situation. And this is what we're doing now. So we can't keep all our kids' baby clothes and baby carrier and baby diaper change. We can't. There's no reason. So I like throwing things away. I like donating. Like I said, James Storehouse is our to go to, foster kids, babies. I'm all about it. So that's what I do. And I realized, okay, I wanna keep that, one dress that I discovered that I was pregnant, the night that I wore
Mhm.
it. I'll keep that instead of keeping everything, or I'll keep
Yeah.
one outfit or one hat of my baby girl because this hat reminds me how she looked like, but I'm not gonna keep all her clothes. Like, find a few items that are symbolic to that period of time that now your kids are a bit older.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely put them in a box in a garage, but there's no need to keep everything, because you know what? Maybe another kid may find this really useful. Another kid, and I say to my kids all the time, another kid that can't afford it may find this to be the item that he or she absolutely loves and needs. And so we're always setting intention, and we also meditate a little bit when we give our clothes to those kids.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. Yeah. It's so true to think of the joy that you are bringing someone else by letting go of
Yeah.
something that you're no longer finding purpose for. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that we didn't cover that we
I
want
mean,
to?
I think once we begin to think of stuff being part of our wholeness, we start gaining
Yes.
awareness for our interconnected connectivity, and to make more mindful and perhaps more creative decisions about the items that we do keep in our lives, right? Because
Yeah.
we everything has energy. Nothing diminishes in energy, and energy, we need some space to have energy. We need some space to create. We need to declutter in order for us to bring something new. Just like food intention, what can you crowd out? What habits can you crowd out today in order for you to bring in something more beneficial? I know for myself, when I do spring cleansing or whatever you want to call it, I feel so good. It's like I cleaned my insides. And so I feel more elevated in our lives. So it's a matter of noticing where and how you're spending your time, what takes your energy, with consciousness and intention being absolutely everything with that. So just find more ways to maybe waste less, appreciate more, donate, exchange, do that whole declutter, because there's no end to the ways that we can improve our tomorrow, both for ourselves and for other people.
Yes, 100%. And just to close on that too, I will say that remembering that your value, your true value, never ever comes from what your possessions are. And I am not in any way saying that I'm at this level, but I think that true freedom is when you're willing to walk away from anything, that you could be stripped to your core of all your possessions, be left with nothing, and you still feel this complete wholeness inside. Like, I think that that's such a um, place that we can all kind of look towards getting to, is that your value is intrinsic to you. It's not defined by anything outside of yourself. And that's like kind of the foundational piece of minimalism, um, right there, that it's not all this stuff. It's right here, you and your
Beautiful.
value.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that covers it. And yeah, we will talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.